Are you ready to unleash the full power of a modern military arsenal on your enemies? Do you want to command the most advanced vehicles and infantry in a combined arms setting? Do you want to customize every aspect of your army? Or create your own epic missions or stories? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you'll need to play Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow is not just another real-time tactics game, it's a large-scale simulation of modern warfare that puts you in charge of American or Russian forces, each with 5 distinct sub-factions at release. Whether you prefer the Marines, the Armored, the Airborne, or the Special Forces, you'll find something that suits your style. Broken Arrow combines the depth and complexity of a joint forces wargame with the thrill and excitement of a fast-paced real-time tactics game. You'll have to use every tool at your disposal to achieve victory, hand-picked from a variety of land, sea and air units. You've got paratroopers, special forces units, helicopters, artillery, tanks, cluster munitions, and even a nuke or two. You'll have to use your brain to outwit your enemy by infiltrating special forces behind enemy lines, using the terrain or structures to your advantage, and choosing the right type of ammunition and fire mission for your artillery. Fit frontline vehicles with laser designators for your aircraft to unleash precision strikes at any time. Broken Arrow features large urban battlefields that are based on actual places, such as industrial harbours, airports, refineries, and cities. You'll have to fight in and around buildings, bridges, highways, and skyscrapers, and it creates a dynamic and realistic combat environment. Broken Arrow gives you the opportunity to create your own army by choosing units and weapons that match your playstyle. You can mix and match units from 6 different categories: recon, infantry, fighting vehicles, support, helicopters, and aircraft. And you can customize your units more than 1,500 ways. By mixing and matching the specializations, choosing different weapons, armor, sensors, and equipment, you can create your own unique combinations and fight under any doctrine that you can possibly think of. At release, there will be a single-player campaign, multiplayer, and community-driven missions. You will be able to create these using the scenario editor, promising to allow you to add cutscenes and dialogue to your missions with ease. Broken Arrow looks set to be a modern warfare experience that challenges your skills. Personally, I can't wait to make my own missions and stories. Currently, there is a multiplayer open beta that's running from the 31st of January 2024 to the 14th of February. If you want to get on board, hit the Steam page, sign up, and you'll be given access. The beta is a multiplayer only beta. It lets you play 6 maps, 5 vs 5, using 2 specializations from each nation. The purpose of this video is to get you up to speed on how to play Broken Arrow, what you can expect from the army builder, having a look at some of the multiplayer maps and some of the tactics and situations you might run into, and anything else that I can think of during the course of this journey. Make sure to hit subscribe and like, because we're having lots and lots of Broken Arrow in 2024. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. During the multiplayer beta, you'll be able to choose from 4 different specializations, 2 from each nation, both with their own strengths and weaknesses. Whether you prefer the brute force of the Armored Brigade or the versatility of the Marines Expeditionary Unit, the sophistication of the Guards Tank Brigade, or the agility of the VDV Brigade, you will find your perfect match. But remember, this is multiplayer only beta to test server settings and balance. So in this case, you will need to team up with your friends or face off against other players in the 5 vs 5 mode. But don't stress too much, because if multiplayer is not really your thing, the full game will have plenty of single player content to enjoy, including more specializations for the nations, which is 5 per faction for a total of 10, and single player campaigns. But for now, let's focus on the multiplayer and see what it has to offer. For the specializations and the USA, we have the Armored Brigade. If you love tanks, this is the specialization for you. You have access to the heaviest and most powerful ground vehicles of the US Army, such as the M1A2 SEP V3, the M109 Paladin, the M270 MLRS. These beasts can crush most units, but they're slow and vulnerable to air attacks, so you will need to rely on your Cav Scouts and Javelins to protect your flanks and surprise enemies. The Marines Expeditionary Unit is the most balanced specialization of the US faction that I can see, with a mix of land, air and sea units. You'll be able to deploy light armored vehicles, amphibious assault vehicles, HIMARS rocket launchers, and various helicopters and planes. You'll have a lot of options to adapt to most situations, and you'll also have to make some smart choices because you need to manage your manpower wisely. The Guard Tank Brigade is the Russian counterpart of the Armoured Brigade, with the most modern and advanced ground vehicles in the game. You'll be able to use things like the T-90M, the T-15 Barbaros, the TOS-1 Burantino, and many more. These vehicles are equipped with active protection systems that can intercept rockets and missiles, making them very hard to destroy. However, you'll have no air support, so you have to watch out for enemy planes and helicopters using ground-based systems. The VDV Brigade, this is the most mobile and flexible specialization of the Russian faction, with the ability to parachute troops and vehicles behind enemy lines. You'll be able to use the BMD armoured transport, the Tu-160 heavy bomber, and the Su-25 fitted out with a plethora of anti-ground weapons. You'll be able to strike from any direction and exploit most weaknesses, but you will also have to deal with limited firepower and durability of your ground-based units. Now that we've learned a little bit about the factions, let's discuss the maps. The open beta will feature 6 multiplayer maps, each with its own unique terrain, climate, and objectives. You'll have to master the different environments and strategies to win on each map, and that includes building a deck perhaps specialized for the map you're playing. Number 1. Prepare for a naval showdown at the seaport town of Baltisk, where Russia's Baltic fleet is stationed. You'll have to fight on a narrow strip of land surrounded by water, where flanking options are scarce. But don't get too comfortable, as the enemy is able to launch surprise helicopter and airstrike attacks from the sea. Can you block the passage to looking here at the overview map, you can see that both teams are fighting over 4 capture points. And that means that both teams usually grab one each and then hotly contest both the other 2 in the center of the town. On a 5 vs 5 battle, this is a very tight space to fight, and so the fighting is very fierce. Decks that have a lot of airstrikes are very valuable, and conversely, having a capable anti-air screen is also just as valuable. Due to the lack of open terrain and the abundance of buildings, squads fitted out for close quarters fighting do really well. However, it must be noted that helicopter strikes to the rear of any lines or paratrooper drops can be absolutely devastating to the supply lines of the enemy team. Number 2. Experience the thrill of night combat at Chernihikovsk, a city in the heart of Kaliningrad's Oblast. This city hosts an airbase and a missile brigade armed with nuclear-capable Iskander-M ballistic missiles. You'll have to use your recon skills to find the best spots to attack and defend in this city, the industrial outskirts and the military bases. This large battlefield has many objectives to capture and hold, so you'll need to plan your strategy carefully. This interesting battlefield shows off the beauty of night traces, as well as having an odd amount of capture points, which means that one team is always under pressure. Each team usually captures the 3 zones closest to their spawn points. However, it's interesting to note that the ones on the extreme flanks usually decide the outcome of the battle, most notably the bridge on the eastern side. The team that captures that first usually is able to put a lot of pressure on the flank of their enemy, and so it's wise to shore up defenses if you're able to take those positions. Number 3. Face a head-on confrontation at the E67 highway, the only ground access between Poland and the Baltic states that can support heavy tanks. This highway is crucial for bringing reinforcements to the Baltic states in the case of invasion. You will start at one end of the highway and fight your way to the other, while trying to secure the objectives along the trench of the highway. Watch out for the farmland and the forest on each side, as the enemy might use them to bypass and cut off your supply line. Number 4. Storm the coastal city of Pärnu in Estonia, a strategic entry point for supplies and equipment. You will have to battle in the middle of the city, sandwiched between the sea and a large swamp. The river that runs through the swamp offers a chance to move your troops from one bank to the other, but you will have to take control of the central bridge first. Alternatively, you can use the swampy fords, just be careful not to get stuck in the mud. Number 5. Fight for the power of the nation at Ignalina Nuclear Power Plant. Located near the border of Belarus, this power plant supplies the entire country with electricity, making it a valuable but vulnerable target. You will have to fight in the swampy area around the power plant, as well as the nearby city of Visaginas, with its classic Soviet architecture. Note, the power plant was decommissioned in real life in 2009, but is active in Broken Arrow's lore. Number 6. Capture the key crossroad at the small town of Lazdajai in Lithuania, where two important roads meet. One road links Vilnius to Poland, and the other links Belarus to Kaliningrad. You will have to secure the objectives inside and around the town, but don't neglect the surrounding farms, groves and fields, separated by dense hedgerows. These can be used to outflank the enemy, or trap you in the town with your supply line severed. So now you know what Broken Arrow is, now you know what maps there are, now you know what factions and specializations there are. The only thing left to do is show you how to build your own army. So let's jump in and grab a deck. So you want to build an army, they said. Well, you come over to create a battle group and you put in a name. I'm going to call this one a US standard battle group. I have no idea what we're going for at the moment, but we're going to build it as we go. I'm probably going to focus more on the Marines, US Marines, and see what we can do with their available troops and vehicles. You'll see a few different categories: recon, infantry, vehicles, support, aircraft and helicopters, but for now we want to spend our 1500 points of recon. So what you can do is you choose your infantry, vehicles, etc. from this, drag them up onto the playing field, and you'll see how many points they're worth. Every single vehicle has a few different options that you can choose for its armament or armor. So in this case, we'll probably take a tow-armed Humvee, IFAV, just for scouting. Quick and able to get around, and it can take out heavy vehicles if it needs to. Next up, we'll bring some scout snipers. We want them on foot. These guys are the elite of the Marine Corps. We don't want them to have a Humvee. Now these guys will be on foot because I plan on using other vehicles in my deck to transport them around. This is just how they come onto the field, so I could give them a Humvee or an LAV, and every time I bring out a squad, that's what vehicle will come with them. Some vehicles can hold more than one squad, so it can be wise to bring, say, a AAV with two squads. A squad of Marines and a squad of rocket soldiers. When you're starting out, I recommend to build a balanced deck, something that has a little bit of everything, but doesn't specialize too hard one way or another. You don't really want to give yourself weaknesses when you're learning to play. It's great just to use the standard default battle group until you get the hang of how the game plays. Every vehicle and unit has a variety of different stats. This LAV has two types of armor. It has kinetic and heat armor. It also has a couple of different perks, like it can be airdropped, it is amphibious, and it also has smoke. Depending on what things you add to the vehicle, such as optics, smoke, extra armor, that will change those stats there. You can see that this LAV with an armor package and an optics package has slightly higher detection radius and slightly higher both kinetic and heat armor. This will increase the cost of the vehicle, and if it's attached to an infantry squad, it can make these force recons go from 75 point units to 150 point units just by virtue of their vehicle alone. So there are a couple of ways you can build a deck. You can build a focused deck where you go in and go, okay, this unit, the M1A2 SEP V2, is going to be the linchpin of my army. So I'm going to spend maximum points to upgrade it, and I'm going to have units that support it in its role. Or you can build a balanced army and then use leftover points to upgrade vehicles across the range. It really is up to you. When they add in extra specializations, it's going to add so much different variety. At the moment, you have to build your army using both of the two available specializations, so you can sort of pick up any weaknesses in either roster. I can see that when the 5 specializations are introduced, there's going to be a lot of decision making on what you take versus what you lose. And that will inspire teamwork really, because people can bring up and work on each other's deficiencies and maximize each other's strengths. I finished building up my recon team and now I've moved to infantry, and the Marines, I'm going to focus on them. I'm going to ignore the mechanized infantry. So what we're going to do is we need to take our core infantry, which will be the Marines. And their AAV can carry 21 troops, which is one full squad of Marines as well as 2 support squads. So keep that in mind. It's always good to sort of mix and match and have units working in synergy together. So in this case, we'll take a Marine AAV with an armor package, slot them up there. We'll add in an extra few units of Marines themselves, but not so many of the vehicles. The vehicles are just to get them to the fight and protect them on their way there. We could use a bunch of Ospreys or a KC-130 to airdrop the Marines into battle. So I'm going to spend about 800 to 900 of my available 2,000 points, and then I'm going to build out my vehicles, my helicopters, and my support line. Once I've figured out what the core of my army is going to be, then I'll come back and top up the infantry as needed. I do like to run infantry heavy armies, but I'm yet to see how effective they will be in this game. In the single player campaign, I had a really good time. In the closed beta, I can't really discuss it, but all I'm going to say is I love the infantry combat, and I love the prospect of airdropping, mobile ops, all of that sort of stuff is just really fun. And the fact that they've got the King Stallion and the Super Stallion in the game that can be used as transport helicopters for vehicles, supplies, and all that fancy stuff. So I've decided that I'm not going to go very heavy on the attack choppers, and we're going to concentrate on the logistics and transport, getting my troops around the field as fast as possible to places where they're needed. And then I think I'll build out my support line to support other players in a 5.5. So perhaps we'll take decent anti-air across 3 different spectrums. We'll maybe go with a radar-guided anti-air, a long-range anti-air like a Patriot missile system, and maybe close-in weapon systems. And then we'll have a couple of ATGMs. I might run an F-18C in an air superiority role, maybe an F-35. We'll have the KC-130. I will take a couple of attack choppers just to escort the Ospreys if they need it. Fit them with anti-chopper or anti-radar. Put them for suppression of air defenses. That might be the best bet for me if I want to use my Ospreys optimally and keep them alive. So you can see how an idea can blossom into a doctrine if you know what you're looking at. If you don't know what you're looking at, then it's going to take a little bit of experimentation. But that's half the fun of these games. But I do recommend going with something fairly basic to start with and sort of playing with your teammates and see what they're doing. Alright, let's come over to support. So we're going to take an LAV-AD, Air Defense LAV, and we will definitely take a Patriot. But it is only 2 missiles. 2 missiles for a lot of supplies, so let's go with the 4 missile pack. We will upgrade the armor on the LAV-AD probably. We do need supply trucks, but not as badly because we have the Stallions and the Ospreys, which can bring supplies. So we'll go with a light supply LAV. This one can be para-dropped as well, so we could drop that out of the back of the KC-130. And I will probably bring a HIMARS, because why not? The HIMARS can be fitted with a buttload of different armaments. I can't remember exactly what this one's called, but it's a big fuck-off ballistic missile. You know, precision striking, 8 kilometers range in this game is a long way. Range is probably the thing that's balancing this game at the moment, I believe. Let's take a linebacker. lots of stingers, and the ability to shoot down missiles as well. But because it has a radar, it is vulnerable to harm type missiles. Now, we have enough points to bring another vehicle if we want to, but instead I'm going to spend the rest of my points on upgrading all the vehicles in this support deck. So everyone's getting the maximum armor upgrade, and that'll increase. Some vehicles will get, a good 50% increase. Others, like this one here, it's doubled the armor, but the armor's negligible anyway. But sometimes that little bit of extra armor plating might keep it alive long enough to send out an extra missile. Who knows? But I can tell you it's better to spend the points than to leave them unspent. Next up, we come to the vehicle line. Now, the Marines vehicle line is pretty diverse. If you want Abrams, and Abrams, as well as an M60 there, which is pretty cute. And I'm going to take the M60, I think, just for some close quarters, town fighting, to take out the lighter Russian vehicles, and enough reactive armor to survive a Cornet missile if you're lucky. So the core of our armored unit today will be the M1A1 FEP, which has a great high explosive round. It's great for taking down light-skinned vehicles, and it still has the dart if it needs to, but it's not as competitive as the later Abrams. We'll bring an LAV with a what's it called? I can't remember what that's called. The Walleye module with a TOW2 attached. Top attack, very deadly LAV. If we can keep him alive, he will serve us well. And then we'll bring the M1A1 HC as well, because it has the heat round and the darters. So it's going to be better for fighting armor. The Marine tanks have the jammers, which can throw off missile track, and the Armored Brigade Abrams have the trophy system, but that is extremely expensive. I think it's like 70 points to add that. We're going to bring in one M1A2 SEP V3, just to show you how expensive this thing is when it's fully upgraded. It's nearly a 400 point tank by itself, but it is a monster. And I think we will bring that just as a prototype. Something, they're going to see all of our Abrams and know how to counter them, and then we're going to have the super strong one that we can really use to hold the line. But I am skirting on budgetary constraints here. It looks like we might have to bring it as a base model, or we have to take all the jammers off of our other tanks just to be able to afford to bring it. So after juggling around, I can't afford to have the armor upgrade and the trophy system, so we'll go with the trophy system and we'll get rid of this one here. Now we can come back to the infantry, now that most of my deck is built and I know where my weaknesses and strengths are, and I want to shore up anti-tank ability. Despite having a lot of tanks in the deck, I feel like I don't have enough to counter the really tough Russian tanks that we will face. We'll be able to handle anything below the T14 and the T15. The T90 we might struggle with. And I also don't have many plans for close air support. So this is more of a support deck, and I don't have the ability to project power. So despite being a Marine deck, it's actually playing like an armored deck, with the added versatility of being able to get troops and supplies around the battlefield quickly. So we've gone with 6 small teams upgraded with better rockets, as well as the Sabre team, which is a TOW2 rocket launcher, and as the Marine Raiders with their AAV. 4 Marine Raiders can fit into 2 AAVs. So we can bring out a very substantial special force unit. And we're going to call this deck the Marines QRF. So we're a quick reaction force. We're not an attacking force. We're there to shore up defensive lines and take advantage of any breaches in the enemy's lines. So the deck I've built has very strong anti-air ability at many ranges, but I still need to cover the anti-radar mission. And so we're going to bring 1 Prowler, fitted out with ECM and 3 harms. which will give us the ability to take down those really potent anti-aircraft defenses that will absolutely slap our Ospreys and our Stallions out of the sky before they know what's happening. I have 2 linebackers which I plan on keeping near the Patriot systems to shoot down any missiles that are sent their way. Now this big mama is going to use up a quarter of our budget, but she can bring missiles, she can bring Hellfires, she can bring Stormbreakers, she can bring 64 other troops as well as a whole heap of supplies. Very, very useful if you have air supremacy or you find a gap in their anti-air defenses. We do need a superiority fighter though, just to ensure that things stay okay. I really wanted to bring the Hornet, but unfortunately the budget was stretched a little bit too thin, so we went with 2 F-35Bs fitted with AMRAAMs as well as light CAS abilities. And so that is the Marines Quick Reaction Force, built by yours truly. Who knows how effective it will be in the current meta, but I feel like for what my goal was to build deck that can support the other players in a 5 vs 5, I think we've got a lot of bases covered. A little bit weak on the infantry side, but that's where I'm hoping another player would be able to shore up that weakness. Alright, well I think I've kept your attention for more than long enough. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment below telling me what you think and what you think will happen with the future of this game. I'm super excited. I've been waiting a long time for an RTS that I can really put my stamp on, and I'm hoping that this is the one. I'm Commander Tyrael, this is Broken Arrow, and we'll catch you soon.